Hey everybody, my name is Tristan and I'm here today with Muse Paint Bar to teach you Sweet Bounty. All the supplies you need are linked in the description down below. Now feel free to follow along or you can customize it however you like. So sit back, relax, grab some liquid courage as I take you step by step through creating this floral masterpiece. All right, so I'm going to go over my materials really quickly. I am working with my canvas here on an easel, or you can paint with it flat on your table. I do recommend putting something underneath of your canvas just in case you paint on the edges. We're going to have our paints, so I'm using some ultraviolet or fluorescent violet, kind of a magenta color, some red, yellow, blue, green, black, and white. I'm also going to grab some paper towels, put that underneath of my water can where I have my brushes, and some extra paper plates to mix up some colors. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So in any painting, we like to break it down by doing the background first. So we're going to figure out our background colors, which is going to be like a light sky blue and then a nice kind of tangerine orange. Feel free to mix up these colors as you like, but if you're following along, this step is for you. So the top color is going to be a light sky blue. I'm going to start by using just a nice big square brush and getting a big scoop of white paint, using the full width of your brush and scooping it like ice cream. And then grabbing just a tiny touch of blue. You can always add more blue if you want to. All right. Now that I have this color, I'm going to figure out how much of this space is going to be painted in with this light blue. I would say about 1/4 up our canvas from the bottom. I'm going to draw a line across. It doesn't need to be absolutely perfect. Just a line across. I use just the tip of my brush. And then from that point up, all that space is going to be painted in with your light blue. I like to paint from one side to the other without stopping in between. Just gives me a nice even coating of this paint. If you prefer more of a textured background, you can do little tiny brush strokes instead. Now a painter's tip, if you want it to look really professional, you can paint the edges of your canvas. Turn it to the side and put that paint right on the edge. Now while that paint is still wet with a clean brush, I'm going to grab some white paint and put a couple streaks with vertical lines in our background, just really randomly, not even really thinking about it. Once I have those lines there, I can slowly work it up and down just to get them all blended in. Next, I'm going to think about my table that my flowers are sitting on. It's going to be a nice tangerine orange, so I'm going to grab just a little bit of white, a nice big scoop of yellow, and about a 1/4 of a scoop of red. I'm going to mix those up. And then we're going to fill in our table. Now just be careful when you get close to the blue. We don't want to blend them right now. You're going to get some greens if you do, so just be really careful and go a little slower when you reach the blue paint in your canvas. Now, just like our sky, we're going to be putting some white streaks throughout it. But instead of vertical lines, we're going to make horizontal lines. So random white streaks, and then blending them in. And with that, our background for now is complete. If we add any more paint on top, it will get a little muddy, so we want it to dry. I want to give myself a nice 5 to 10 minute dry break, and then we'll be back. All right, so we are back. We're gonna go ahead and get some fun kind of checkered patterns towards the bottom of our quote unquote sky of our painting. This is actually gonna be done with that same orange paint that we used for our table. So I don't need a lot on my brush, and I'm still gonna use that big square brush. So just a little bit of paint. And what we're gonna do is on the edges, we're just going to sweep this color in a couple of places. Some lines are gonna be longer, some lines are gonna be shorter. Same thing on the other side. And then we're also going to do a couple of lines going from the bottom of that blue section and flicking them upwards. So we should have this nice kind of grid work type of brush stroke. Next up, we're going to add the shadow that is going to be underneath of our vase. Again, still using that same exact brush. What I'm going to use is some straight red paint. And in the center here, I'm just going to lightly sweep back and forth. A little bit of this red. Just kind of a nice little splotch of it. All right, we are going to take a break from the bottom half of our painting and move up towards the top. So our leaves are sitting behind all of our flowers, so we're going to do our leaves next. Now I'm going to switch over to my filbert brush. It's kind of rounded at the end, but it's still flat. A brush kind of like this larger pointy brush works as well, whatever you feel more comfortable with. Now I'm going to start off by mixing a nice grassy green shade with just a little bit of white, a nice big scoop of yellow, and a half a scoop of green. So we want to think that our flowers are going to be centered around here and our leaves are just going to be around the edges. Some of our leaves, you're going to want to make them almost like a teardrop shape or like a football shape. A nice green little football there. Some of our leaves are going to have a little bit more shape. You can do a bunch of little rounds, little lumps and bumps. Now we want to give our leaves some depth. So what we're going to do first is get in some shadows by creating a darker green to put towards the bottom of your leaves that will be closer towards your flowers. I'm going to grab some of my green, a little bit of yellow, and maybe even just a touch of black. You can see they're very contrasting. All you need to do is start towards the center and just kind of flick out. Flick up towards the top of your leaf. And then I'm going to switch over to a small pointy brush and we're going to add some highlights to our leaves. So I'm going to grab a little bit of more white and yellow and mix it into my grassy green. And we're just going to flick a little bit of this towards the tips of our leaves. keeping it real messy. Everything in this painting isn't too formed. All the lines are just a little carefree. Once I have my leaves in, we're going to move back down here to finish up the shadow. I'm going to switch over to a smaller flat brush. So it's still a square brush, it's just a little bit smaller than what I've been using for my background. And we're going to be mixing up a dark blue to put down here as like the true shadow. So I'm grabbing some blue paint and a little bit of black paint, mixing those up. A very, very dark midnight blue is what I want. So we're going to create kind of a circle by using back and forth movements. So I'm kind of up here, going back and forth, bringing it to the left side, down to the bottom, and the same thing on the other side. And you can see that this circle is kind of off center. You don't want it to be directly in the center of your canvas, just off to the right a little bit. And then we're going to thicken up these lines some. Once we have our shadow, we're going to draw in our mason jar. I'm going to go for the smallest, pointiest brush that you have. And I'm still going to use that midnight blue. Maybe make it a little bit lighter if you want to by adding some more blue paint. Now for this mason jar, first thing we want to do is figure out where it opens for your flowers. I want it to be right kind of center of this blue section of my sky in between these leaves. So I'm going to draw like a little smiley face shape. Bring the lines down a little bit on the sides. Now from there, you want these lines to bulge outwards and then come straight down. And once you get towards the bottom, you want to curve it right before you go across. And this is going to go right through the center of that little red circle that we created with the shadow. Once we have the basic shape, we're going to add some little lines to give it that texture of a mason jar. These little rounded lines here at the top. There's going to be a rounded line, kind of like a rainbow shape, on the left in the middle. That's going to be behind the stems of our flowers. And then round it out along the bottom. Then we're going to take a small break. During this break, we really just want our leaves to dry, because if we add our flowers on top while it's still wet, it will get a little muddy. Taking just another quick 3 to 5 minute break. All right, we are back, and next up we're going to think about some flowers. I'm going to do my light purple flowers first, and all of our flowers are going to be done with this flat round brush. I think it gives great petals in just one swoop. So for my purple, I'm going to grab some of this magenta and some white, mix those up, and if you want to give it more of a lavender tint, just the smallest amount of blue helps to get it there. So all of my purple flowers are over here on the right side. I'm just going to dab some random purple dots. And it's okay if they overlap your jar a little bit. Now while it's still wet, you can take a little bit of white paint and put a couple little highlights in there. Next up, we have our red/pink flowers. I definitely think it's more of a coral color. So I'm going to grab some red paint and just a little bit of white, Now, if yours looks very pinkish and you want it to look more on the salmon side, I recommend grabbing just a little bit of yellow paint. So something around here. Now I know I have one big red flower, almost dead center, but maybe a little bit off to the left. So I'm just going to go around the edge. And then fill it in. And maybe put a couple other little red dots around. I want some other red flowers in there. And again, like we did with our purple, we're going to add a little bit of white. This is going to really help to define the petals of our flower. So when we paint this in, I'm going to start from the center and do little loops continuously as I work my way out to the end of my flower. After we get our flowers, we're going to add the stems that are going to be in our mason jar. Now, we're not actually going to connect them to our flowers. They're just going to be sort of floating there. Let's grab a nice pointy brush. And if you still have that grassy green color, we're going to use that. Just throwing a couple of stems, just kind of floating here in the middle, flicking downwards, and making some of them a little bit longer, making some of them a little bit shorter. And then grabbing our darker green to add some shadows. We're getting real close to finishing up our painting here. We're going to add another rounded line on our mason jar right through the middle, a nice smiley face going over top of those stems. This helps to make it look like you're really encapsulating those flower stems. And the last bit is going to be the highlights on our mason jar. This is all going to be done with white paint, and I'm going to grab a larger pointy brush like this one. We're going to have some white paint along the edges. Along the bottom. Along those rounded lines. And then also adding some highlights just kind of in the top and bottom corners, as if light is hitting those points. Now, of course, when you're done with your painting, the last and final step should be to sign your name. You have to claim it just in case you sell it on eBay for millions. I like to sign it in the bottom corner, but you can sign it wherever you like. Maybe even put the year, so you can remember the time that you painted it. We hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and we would love to see your masterpieces. You can comment your photos down below or tag us on social media at Muse Paint Bar. Now, if you enjoyed this tutorial, make sure you like and subscribe to our channel and check out our shorts for more videos. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you again next time.